This week's module was once again super interesting and provided a lot more information regarding like the advancement of technology and provided some new arguments and some new ways to think about it. So in Technology versus Humanity, chapter 7, it was titled Digital Obesity, Our Latest Pandemic, and the author defined digital obesity as a mental and technological condition in which data, information, media, and general digital connectedness are being accumulated to such an extent that they are certain to have a negative effect on health, well-being, happiness, and life in general. So it's basically obesity in the digital technology form. And so it's basically that we are just getting so much information and media thrown at us all the time that it's just like harming people's well-being. People are becoming isolated. They're not moving because they're sitting on their phones like sedentary all day. So it's actually leading to like physical obesity as well. But basically it talks about how like food obesity can be caused by like craveability, which is also being engineered and manufactured in the technology, like the digital world, by like creating this like constant need for more. And like many of us actually crave connectivity as we conduct our daily lives, and we feel like disconnected or incomplete when we aren't constantly like connected with people. And part of the issue is just like how free and cheap and widely available this digital data is. It's like obviously regular food is not free, it's not always cheap, and so that helps prevent some obesity, but with digital it's so just readily available. And so basically the author calls upon like technology providers that they need to support more of a balanced like kind of diet with this as we move forward and take a more holistic business model that puts the person before profits. So yeah, the thing too with it is it's like it's creating a ton of like a abundance on the outside, but creating scarcity or lack of meaning on the inside, which is really damaging and just like causing a lot of issues. So it's really important for us to strive towards having balanced digital diets as we move forward. And along with having too much, we're also being observed too much. So people are not only like becoming digitally obese, but also digitally naked. And so the author like poses this question kind of to like end the chapter is, do we now live inside the machine or does the machine live inside of us? So it's really important to consider as human beings, like as we move forward, and for these technology companies to think about too. In the article, What Do Human Beings Need? Rethinking Technology in the Good Society, it basically like it brings in some like theories and like philosophical arguments, and talks about like what the good society is. And Simon Weil says rights are ineffective so long as no one recognizes recognizes a corresponding obligation. So it's kind of saying how like we have all these digital rights, so to speak, but nobody sees no one's taking like the obligations to like actually do anything about it. And so these rights are basically like they're kind of a moot point because nobody sees obligations or anything that they have to do with it. And so that's why we kind of need more laws and regulations when it comes to the digital space. And we just have like obligations towards like other human beings. And then they also talked about how like loneliness and alienation is like the perfect storm for totalitarian regimens. And so with this digital environment, we're becoming a lot more isolated. So that's kind of dangerous in like a governmental business sense of how they can start to control us even more. And then it also talks about manufactured neediness. And basically, Ivan Illich kind of said that, yes, humans have needs, but a lot of that is just created by the environment that we live in. And that we like get this, it's kind of like in the chapter 7 of the book, how it talks about like that constant need for more and craveability. Like we're always needing things. And it like uses an example of like the Ring camera, and it's like whose interest does it really serve, us or Amazon? And it's really Amazon because we're ordering like more packages from them, and allows like Amazon to like profit from that dependence on them, and that we feel like we need this extra security of having cameras, and like also protects them with like stolen packages and things like that. And then it talks about the good society, and it says that whether we have a good society depends on like the kind of opportunities that society provides for its citizens. And basically the author of this article just says that they've assembled the work to kind of show how the arguments are all circling around a similar set of concerns about human needs, work, technology, justice, and the good life. and how they're all just interlocking realities and that we need to consider them together. In chapter 8 of Technology versus Humanity, it talks about precaution versus proaction. And so it just says, like, as technology's power increases, it's super important to kind of find that balance between precaution and proaction. So precaution is, or I guess proaction is looking proactively at what might happen, the possible consequences and unintended consequences, before, like, we kind of keep moving forward. And then, so it's just, like, really important to kind of understand that. And also it's important to understand, like, how we're affecting, like, the community. And the author essentially, like, proposes that we need to find, like, a good balance between the two. To quote him, he says, "Too much precaution may paralyze us with fear and create a self-amplifying cycle of restraint. Pushing cutting-edge science, technology, engineering, and math activities or game-changing inventions into the underground will quite likely criminalize those undertaking them. However, a purely proactionary approach won't work for us either, because there's too much at stake given the exponential, combinatorial, and interdependent nature of technological advances we are now experiencing." So it's saying, like, too much precaution is dangerous because we're not gonna advance, and, like, if we put too many things in place, then these things are going to kind of go underground and people are going to be penalized for advancements that could actually really help society. And honestly, things might get worse by doing that because underground you can't really regulate it and, like, kind of see what's happening. But then they also say that he also says too much of a proactionary approach won't work because there's just too much at stake to just be like, oh, let's just see what happens. So it's important to understand, like, the potential consequences of actions, but also allowing people to kind of push those limits and explore at the same time. And then the last article, Technology and the Good Society, also talks about the good society and what it is. And just kind of it says that researchers in philosophy of technology agree that evaluating technology includes evaluating its ethical and social consequences, which may take the form of reflecting on the good society. It's just like a lot of the other articles we've had throughout the course, that we need to understand the ethical and social consequences of the things that we're doing, and kind of think about that as we move forward. And then it says that usually thinking about technology and the good life focuses more on the individual, but the author thinks we need to use a more holistic approach of thinking about, like, the whole community and how that technology impacts the individual's role in the community, and, like, just how it shapes, like, individual lives and meanings, and then how that affects, like, the community and practices. And so the article at the end, author says, like, at the beginning of the intro, the author says, like, the present essay and polemic then is not only concerned with approach or level of analysis as such, it also raises questions about what kind of good society and good politics with technology we want. So it's just essentially saying, like, we need to just think about what we really want in a good society and what we want this technology to do. So personally, like, I have actually somewhat heard about the good society and, like, that theory and what it kind of entails, and a little bit of how technology plays a role in it, but it was really interesting to learn more in depth about that and hear some other arguments and support for it. And then I've also seen and sometimes felt that digital obesity, like, we are just given way too much information constantly. I've heard about that a ton, and I just think it definitely, like, kind of clogs us and clouds our thinking. So it's important to kind of be aware of that moving forward. And then with, like, the course connection, all the articles kind of touch on the fact that we're just getting too much information and advancing too rapidly, which is what a lot of the articles throughout the course have also talked about. And then obviously both Technology and the Good Society and What Do Human Beings Need, Rethinking Technology and the Good Society, talk about the good society and how technology plays a role, and just talks about, like, multiple theories and principles in regards to it. And then both chapters of Technology versus Humanity continue to build and support the author's argument. So, like I said, this was another really interesting module that provided, I know me personally, with a lot of important information and just, like, questions kind of moving forward, and just, like, further understanding of how technology is progressing and how that progression is affecting the individual and society.